St. Verity Abbey had been silent for almost 30 years. Its private chapel opened on Lucien Crow's midnight recital. Outside, freezing rain struck the stained glass windows without pause. Lucien was a famous composer, collector, and ruthless musical patron. That night, he promised to reveal a long-lost requiem. He claimed the score would change the history of sacred music. Shortly before midnight, Lucien entered the chapel alone. He carried the manuscript and the chapel's only iron key. Then he locked the carved oak door from the inside. Detective Mara Voss waited among the guests in the cloister. At midnight, the pipe organ suddenly filled the abbey with music. For 7 minutes, no one disturbed the private performance. Then one violent final note echoed through the stone corridor. A heavy crash followed and the music stopped instantly. Mara reached the chapel door before the frightened guests. The iron key remained visible side beneath the lock. Servants broke the door while thunder shook the old rafters. Lucy beside the organ bench, completely motionless. The manuscript remained open above the ivory key. A tiny puncture marked the tip of his right index finger. No blade, needle, or poisoned container could be found. The stained glass windows were sealed behind iron frames. The organ pipes rose against a solid wall of stone. Yet the organ had continued playing after Lucien collapsed. Several guests whispered that the requiem had killed its performer. Mara ignored them and examined the organ mechanism carefully. Behind the keyboard, a brass music cylinder was still turning. The organ could play automatically when the cylinder was engaged. Lucien had not performed the music everyone heard outside. Someone had created a false 7-minute timeline of his death. Mara inspected every ivory key beneath the open manuscript. One key felt warmer and looser than the other. She removed the key and found a narrow spring beneath it. Inside the spring waited a retracting steel needle. Pressing the key forced the needle through a tiny opening. Releasing it pulled the point immediately back into darkness. The weapon had never left the locked chapel. A trace of coated the needle's narrow base. Mara identified the substance as a facting nerve. The killer knew exactly which note Lucien would press first. The open manuscript provided the next important clue. The opening chord had been rewritten in darker black ink. One unnecessary note had been added beneath Lucien's marking. That added note matched the key containing the hidden needle. Someone had altered the score after Lucien last examined it. The investigation moved into the Abbey's old chapter house. Helena Crow, Lucien's widow, wore gray and showed little sorrow. She admitted Lucien planned to leave her nothing. His nephew Daniel feared losing control of the family estate. He claimed he spent midnight speaking with 3 guests. Father Matthias, the Abbey caretaker, controlled every chapel key. He insisted they never left his belt. Final suspect was Iris Bell, the organ's young restorer. She wore a deep teal coat and carried a leather toolkit. Iris said her restoration ended 2 days before the recital. She denied touching the manuscript or changing any organ key. Mara asked who had engaged the automatic music cylinder. Iris explained Lucien often tested it before private performances. Then Mara noticed on Iris's left glove. Iris said she had repaired labels inside the pipe chamber. Mara returned to the chapel and compared both ink samples. The added note contained the same metallic blue particles. That rare ink came from Iris' personal restoration pen. Still, ink alone could not prove she built the weapon. Mara opened the organ's lower maintenance panel. Fresh pale wood dust covered the older black interior. One screw had been replaced with a slightly smaller head. A strand of teal wool clung beneath its sharp edge. Iris argued that her coat fibers could remain from earlier work. Mara agreed and continued searching the automatic cylinder. A thin cord connected the cylinder to a delayed release weight. The weight had been set to drop exactly at midnight. When it fell, the organ began playing without human hand. Lucien's first movement toward the altered cord triggered the needle. The poison acted before the automatic music had finished. The guests outside heard 7 minutes of perfect mechanical act. Mara examined Lucian's private correspondence for a motive. One letter promised a wealthy buyer the lost requiem. Another ordered Iris to surrender every original. The supposedly ancient music was not ancient at all. Iris had composed it during the organ's restoration. Lucien planned to present her work as a historic discovery. He would gain fame while Iris received neither credit nor payment. When she objected, Lucien threatened to end her career. But Mara required one final connection. She inspected the leather toolkit beside Iris. One compartment should have contained a fine voicing needle. The slot was empty, but a broken clasp remained inside. Its shape matched the retracting needle hidden beneath the key. Iris said the tool had disappeared several weeks earlier. Mara placed the clasp the weapon's engraved base. Both pieces formed one continuous decorative pattern. The murder needle had been cut from Iris's missing tool. Mara reconstructed the crime step by step. Iris entered the chapel during the final restoration inspection. She replaced one organ key and installed the hidden spring. Then she altered the manuscript with her metallic blue ink. She connected the music cylinder to the delayed release weight. Lucien later entered alone and locked the chapel door himself. He opened the score and prepared to perform at midnight. The falling weight started the automatic requiem behind him. Lucien pressed the added opening note and triggered the needle. The toxin entered his finger before he understood the danger. He collapsed while the organ continued its mechanical performance. Iris remained by Whit's sides for 7 minutes. She believed the music would establish a perfect time of death. But the loose key, altered ink, and broken tool remained. Iris stared at the stolen manuscript in Mara's. Her calm expression finally gave way to bitter exhaustion. She admitted Lucien had intended to erase her completely. Police escorted her through the cloister before the storm ended. Mara returned alone and stopped the turning brass cylinder. The abbey became silent for the first time that night. No cursed requiem had killed Lucien Crow. No spirit had played the organ behind the locked door. There was only stolen music and a hidden mechanical needle. The false performance had concealed the true moment of death. But one unnecessary exposed the entire design. By dawn, rainwater shone across the abbey courtyard. The final music faded, but the evidence remained perfectly clear.
Blackthorn Hall stood beneath the cold midnight sky. The ancient tower guarded the frozen valley below. The 7 guests gathered there for a private announcement. Their host, Sir Alden, collected rare mechanical wonders. He would reveal a new will and restored clock. Before midnight, Alden climbed alone into the tower, locked the heavy iron door from inside. Lo, the guests felt the great clock trembling. The first chime rolled across the frozen valley. A second followed, then a louder third chime. Everyone expected silence after the 12th midnight strike. Instead, a 13th chime shook the entire tower. Then a sharp cry sounded behind the locked door. Detective Maravos immediately raced up the stairs. The tower key lay visible inside the room. No one answered, so servants broke the lock. Alden sat motionless beneath the enormous clock. The fallen chair lay beside the inspection table. A tiny wound marked his upper chest. But yet no weapon remained anywhere inside the locked room. A narrow window was frozen shut high above ground. These stone walls offered no passage or hidden door. Only the massive clock machinery continued moving behind him. R ordered every guest to remain inside Blackthorn Hall. She first investigated the impossible 13th midnight chime. The clock mechanism could strike only 12 times. But someone had altered it before Alden entered the chamber. Mara found fresh brass dust. The newly oiled screw rested on the stone floor. Alden's spotless gloves proved he never touched the screw. Lara noticed the wound followed a perfectly straight angle. The object had struck directly from the front. The open floor before Alden was completely empty. Above his chair stood a decorative mechanical knight. Lower, it raised a harmless brass lance. Lara watched the clockwork figure slowly reset itself. The one lance section had been polished very recently. Dark stain marked the narrow slot behind it. Someone had turned the knight into a concealed weapon. Lara began questioning suspects inside the candlelit drawing room. Lady Beatrice feared losing her inheritance under Alden's will. She admitted arguing with her father about the will. Edmundshaw hid enormous debts from reckless gambling. He claimed 3 witnesses saw him drinking at midnight. Thomas Pike had maintained the tower clock for decades. Another expert had helped restore it the previous month. Lydia Marlowe, a gifted mechanical engineer. Lydia answered calmly, hiding every trace of nervousness. She said Alden dismissed her before the evening meal. Lydia, all restoration work was complete. Claire asked why fresh brass dust remained inside. Lydia blamed Jonas, then glanced quickly toward him. Lara returned upstairs and examined the clock's strike wheel. 12 deep notches controlled the 12 midnight chimes. A temporary metal tooth sat beside the final notch. That extra tooth had created the 13th strike. It also engaged a secondary gear behind the clock. Thin rods connected that hidden gear to the knight. 13th chime, its lance drove forward. The polished section slid outward like a narrow piston. It extended through the slot toward Alden's chair. The strong spring immediately pulled the lance backward. The hidden weapon had never left the locked room. It simply returned inside the clockwork knight afterward. Mara measured the lance against Alden's seated wound. Their alignment matched within the width of 1 coin. The chair required 1 exact position for the strike. The fresh scratches proved someone had moved it recently. The clean rectangle revealed its original place farther left. The killer positioned it directly before the hidden lance. The mechanism alone could not identify its maker. Mara entered the restoration workshop beside the tower. The drawer held several custom-made brass gear teeth. One empty compartment matched the tooth inside the clock. The file bore fresh brass residue. Nearby, Mara found a spool of black spring wire. The same wire controlled the lance's automatic return. Lee Jonas admitted he and Lydia shared the workshop. But either restorer could have prepared the deadly modification. Lara lifted the oily screw carefully with tweezers. The tiny fiber remained trapped beneath its damaged head. In magnification, the fiber proved dark green wool. It wore a rough brown work jacket. Lydia alone wore a distinctive dark green wool coat. They argued old fibers could remain inside the machinery. Mara calmly acknowledged that her explanation was possible. Then Mara produced a sealed contract from Alden's papers. It transferred Lydia's patent rights without any payment. Lydia had confronted Alden after discovering his betrayal. But he threatened to destroy her career if challenged. Left his office furious yet carefully controlled. Mara noticed the ceremonial clock key nearby. Each night, Alden placed it on the inspection table. That evening, the key rested on the opposite side. Someone familiar with his habits rearranged everything precisely. Lady's notebook contained sketches of Alden's nightly routine, marked the chair key and lamp positions. But one important page had been deliberately torn out. Lara shaded the next sheet, revealing pressure marks. The hidden impression showed the modified mechanical knight. It included the extra tooth and retracting spring. Mara gathered the guests and reconstructed the murder. Before dinner, Lydia secretly entered the tower workshop. She installed the temporary tooth inside the strike wheel. Then she modified the lance and repositioned the chair. Later, Alden entered alone and locked the iron door. They sat down and placed the clock key nearby. Alden waited beneath the clock face as midnight approached. The 13th chime activated Lydia's hidden secondary gear. Light struck once, then instantly retracted its lens. Downstairs witnesses believed Lydia could not be responsible, but brass dust, green wool, and drawings remained. Lydia's confidence collapsed when Mara revealed the notebook. She admitted preparing the mechanism over several weeks. Police escorted Lydia through the snow before sunrise. Behind them, the ancient gears continued turning calmly. The locked tower contained no ghost or invisible assassin. Only gears, timing, and one carefully positioned chair. The 13th chime was never an accidental mistake. It was the deadly moment Lydia had engineered.
On winter's first night, Ravenhall Manor hosted a private gathering. Outside, heavy snow buried the road and silenced the forest. Inside, 12 guests dined beneath chandeliers and ancestral portraits. Their host, Dr. Julian Harrow, was a brilliant, feared botanist. He promised to reveal a discovery worth an enormous fortune. Before midnight, Harrow left dinner and entered his glass conservatory. He ordered servants to lock the outer hall behind him. Minutes later, a terrible scream shattered the ballroom music. The guests rushed over and found the conservatory doors locked. Through glass, they watched Harrow collapse beside the white orchid. They broke the doors open, but Harrow was already dead. His face was pale, with one hand clutching his throat. An overturned chair lay beside tables covered in laboratory notes. A shattered silver watch rested near his polished black shoes. Thick frost sealed every conservatory window from the inside. Outside, untouched snow surrounded every wall without footprints. No weapon, intruder, or hidden passage appeared anywhere inside. Detective Mara Voss arrived before the blizzard closed the road. The room smelled of damp soil, smoke, and sweet perfume. At first, Harrow's death seemed to be caused by poison. Yet no glass, needle, powder, or poisoned food remained. Only the white orchid stood untouched beneath a brass lamp. Voss crouched beside Harrow and examined his broken pocket watch. Its hands had stopped at precisely 11:43. Yet its dry, clean mechanism was still working perfectly. Someone stopped the hands, then deliberately smashed the glass. Therefore, the apparent time of death had been staged. Voss noticed a thin burn circling Harrow's right wrist. Nearby, a copper watering pipe vanished beneath the floor. The pipe connected every flower bed to the central boiler. Normally, warm vapor protected the conservatory's delicate tropical plants. That night, however, the pipe felt cold through her glove. Someone had disabled the heating shortly before Harrow's murder. Voss questioned everyone inside Ravenhall's dark wood-paneled library. Lady Evelyn, Harrow's sister, admitted fearing his announcement. She believed Julian planned to sell their family estate immediately. Professor Crane insisted their valuable research belonged equally to him. Thomas, the young gardener, said Harrow threatened to dismiss him. The housekeeper confessed several keys had disappeared that afternoon. One guest remained unnaturally calm through every uncomfortable question. She was Clara Bell, Harrow's quiet personal assistant. Clara claimed she spent the evening copying letters upstairs. Voss trusted calm witnesses less than visibly frightened ones. She returned alone and inspected every label in the conservatory. One label beneath the white orchid had been recently replaced. Its handwriting was neat, but the scientific name was wrong. Expert botanist Harrow would never make such a simple mistake. Beneath the false label, Voss discovered a narrow metal switch. It controlled a hidden cabinet inside the flower stand. Crane explained Harrow used the cabinet during private presentations. It released warm mist around rare plants for dramatic effect. Yet police found the cabinet's mist reservoir completely empty. On its brass nozzle, Voss discovered faint crystalline residue. It carried the same sweet scent lingering throughout the room. The substance was vaporized plant toxin, not ordinary perfume. Heated into mist, it attacked the lungs within seconds. Harrow had unknowingly activated the hidden device himself. The killer never needed to enter the locked conservatory. Someone had filled the hidden reservoir before dinner began. Then they replaced the orchid label, concealing the control switch. When Harrow pressed it, the cabinet released deadly vapor. Yet one question remained: why were the copper pipes cold? The answer waited beneath the conservatory, inside the boiler room. Normally, the heating system created powerful upward air currents. Those currents carried dangerous vapor harmlessly toward the roof vents. Shutting down the boiler kept the poisonous mist low. It gathered around Harrow as he leaned over the orchid. The sealed glass walls trapped the toxin completely around him. Voss searched the boiler room for signs of recent activity. A fresh black oil stain marked the main control wheel. Nearby, dark blue wool thread clung to a rough bolt. Evelyn wore red, crane gray, and Thomas wore brown. Only Clara had arrived wearing a dark blue wool coat. Voss wondered how Clara entered the restricted boiler room. The housekeeper's missing keys supplied the next crucial clue. One returned key carried soft white wax within its grooves. Someone had pressed it into wax, creating an exact copy. Police searched Clara's desk and found unused ceiling candles. One candle showed the impression of a long iron key. Clara copied the boiler key without permanently taking it. Still, she argued that many servants used sealing wax daily. Her confidence held until Voss revealed the shattered watch. Clara's eyes moved toward the clock before she could stop. The watch marked Clara's planned alibi, not Harrow's death. At 11:43, a maid supposedly visited Clara upstairs. The maid remembered visiting, but could not confirm the minute. Clara had stopped Harrow's watch to create a false timeline. She wanted everyone believing Harrow died while she was upstairs. In truth, the poison trap was prepared hours earlier. Clara's location during Harrow's death proved absolutely nothing. Voss unfolded financial letters discovered inside Harrow's locked desk. They proved Clara helped create his most valuable formula. Harrow planned to claim it and dismiss her unpaid. He also intended to destroy every record of her contribution. Clara had worked silently for years behind Harrow's celebrated name. Humiliation and anger gradually hardened into calculated revenge. Before dinner, Clara copied the key and entered the basement. She disabled the heating and filled the reservoir with toxin. Then she replaced the orchid label and awaited Harrow's demonstration. His pride would make him press the hidden switch. She knew locked doors would suggest an impossible outside killer. The staged watch was meant to complete her perfect defense, but the wrong flower name exposed the replacement label. Cold pipes revealed the heating system's deliberate shutdown. Crystalline residue proved poison, traveled through the hidden mist device. The copied key, blue thread, and wax identified Clara. Before everyone, Voss calmly reconstructed each step of the crime. Clara listened silently while snow struck the library windows. Her controlled confidence slowly collapsed into exhausted, silent defeat. She admitted the plan but refused to call it madness. Police escorted Clara across.
That night, a violent storm swallowed the isolated Blackwood Manor. Rain hammered the windows while thunder shook its ancient stone walls. Inside, pale yellow lamps barely touched the endless shadowed corridors. Then a strange crash echoed from the master's private study.
A frightened maid hurried toward the sound and tried the door. It would not move because it was locked from the inside. She called the others, and together they forced the heavy door. What waited beyond it silenced every person in the hallway.
The master sat motionless beside his desk, already dead. Loose papers covered the carpet like fragments of a broken secret. A drinking glass lay overturned near one trembling hand. Beside the chair, a large pool of water reflected the firelight. A tiny wound marked the center of the victim's chest.
It was small, clean, and deep enough to kill instantly. Yet no knife, needle, or weapon could be found anywhere. The study door remained locked, and the windows were firmly sealed. Even the room's only key was lying inside the study. A murder had occurred where no murderer could possibly enter.
Before midnight, Detective Elias Ward arrived through the pouring rain. He removed his wet coat and silently studied every frightened face. Unlike the others, he did not begin with the body. His attention settled first on the mysterious water beside the chair.
The overturned glass could not have held such a large amount. Rainwater was impossible because the window frame remained completely dry. Therefore, the water had appeared after the room was locked. Detective Ward knelt beside the victim and examined the clothing.
The hole in the shirt was narrow, smooth, and unusually precise. Something sharp had pierced straight through cloth, flesh, and bone. But the weapon itself had vanished without leaving a single fragment. How could a
The
killer
woman in
remove it
red
from a
admitted
sealed
arguing
room?
with the victim earlier.
That question turned every
She
witness
claimed
into a
she left the
possible
study
suspect.
long before the fatal moment. An older man confessed that money had damaged their friendship. Other relatives insisted they remained inside their bedrooms during the storm.
The maid said she only delivered tea before hearing the crash. One young man, however, could barely control his nervous breathing. He avoided the detective's eyes and answered every question too quickly. His name was Adrian Vale, the victim's troubled young nephew.
Each witness offered an explanation that sounded reasonable on its own, but the detective sensed that everyone was hiding something important. The master had recently changed several legal and financial documents. Names were crossed out, signatures replaced, and payments suddenly canceled.
Someone inside the manor was about to lose everything. More than one person had wished the master permanently silent. Detective Ward returned to the study and closed the door. He inspected the lock, the hinges, and every wooden panel. No wire had turned the key from outside the room.
No hidden passage waited behind the bookshelves or painted walls. The windows had not opened, and the chimney was far too narrow. Then the detective slowly raised his eyes toward the ceiling. Above the chair was a square iron ventilation grill.
The victim's position stood almost perfectly beneath that dark opening. For the first time, the impossible murder gained a possible direction. Ward requested the manor's original architectural plans from the basement. The ventilation shaft connected the study to an unused upper service area.
A narrow storage loft ran directly above the locked room. Near that loft, investigators discovered an old wooden ladder. Most of its steps carried a thick blanket of undisturbed dust, but several marks had been freshly rubbed by hands and shoes.
Someone had climbed that ladder during the night of the murder.
The dust near the ventilation cover had also been recently disturbed. A faint shoe pattern appeared beside the edge of the shaft. Detective Ward removed the grill and searched the dark passage. Deep inside, cold drops of water clung to the metal. They were too clean and too cold to be storm water.
Scratches showed the grill had been opened, then quickly replaced. Now the water, the wound, and the ceiling became connected. But one final question remained. What had traveled through the shaft? The detective searched the kitchen, laundry room, and servants' hall.
Inside the freezer, he found a strangely shaped empty mold. It was long, narrow, and pointed like a deadly spike. Fresh frost proved that something had recently been frozen inside it. In the laundry room, damp clothing had been hidden beneath towels.
No one admitted wearing those clothes outside during the storm, yet the fabric carried cold moisture and gray ventilation dust. The stains perfectly matched the residue inside the upper shaft. Then Ward examined Adrian Vale's shoes beside the fireplace.
Their soles carried the same pattern found on the dusty ladder. At last, every separate clue formed one complete and terrible method. The murder weapon had never been removed from the locked room. It had simply destroyed itself after completing its deadly purpose.
Adrian had created a sharp spike entirely from frozen water. He kept it hidden inside the freezer until the final moment. Every evening, the master worked beneath the same ventilation opening. He also locked the study door to protect his private documents.
Adrian understood that habit and turned it into the perfect trap. During the thunder, he carried the ladder into the upper loft. The storm concealed every footstep, scrape, and movement above the room. He opened the grill and lowered the frozen spike into position.
From the shaft, he struck without ever entering the study.
The weapon pierced the victim's chest and caused immediate death. Adrian withdrew his tools, replaced the grill, and hid the ladder. He believed the locked door would make the crime supernatural. But he had forgotten the blazing fireplace beside the victim.
Heat slowly melted the weapon after it fell into the room. The ice became water and gathered beside the dead man's chair. That explained the missing weapon and the strangely clean wound. It also explained why the pool was larger than the glass.
Before the household, Detective Ward reconstructed the entire impossible crime. He showed them the locked door, sealed windows, and ceiling grill. He revealed the disturbed ladder, the freezer mold, and damp clothing. He placed Adrian's shoe beside the matching print in the dust.
Together, they created only one path, leading directly to Adrian. The young man's face drained of color as the truth emerged. The altered documents proved his inheritance was about to disappear. The master had threatened to expose debts Adrian could never repay.
Anger, fear, and desperation had shaped his cold-blooded plan. He trusted melting ice to erase every trace of the weapon. He never imagined that melted water would become the strongest evidence. Confronted with the dust, shoes, clothing, and freezer, Adrian surrendered.
Police led him from the manor before the storm had ended. The remaining guests watched in silence, shocked by his hidden hatred. Near dawn, the rain weakened and the clouds began to separate. Detective Ward stepped outside as sunlight touched the ancient roof.
Behind him, the locked room no longer held any mystery. No ghost had crossed the walls, and no magic erased the weapon. There had only been careful planning, frozen steel like ice and heat. A deadly spike had vanished, but its water remained behind.
And sometimes, what disappears becomes the clearest evidence of all.
Ashcombe Manor opened its portrait gallery only once each year. That winter night rained every window with silver streams. 20 ancestral faces watched the invited guests enter in silence. Their host was Victor Lang, a ruthless collector of stolen masterpieces. He promised to reveal the truth behind his most valuable portrait. The painting showed a pale woman wearing a black pearl necklace. Local servants called her the Widow of Ashcombe Hall. They believed anyone who unveiled her at midnight would soon die. Victor laughed at the legend and dismissed every frightened warning. Before midnight, he entered the portrait gallery completely alone. He carried one envelope, one candle, and a Gary's. Then he locked the heavy oak door from the inside. The guests waited in the adjoining ballroom beneath fading music. At 12, a bell rang once from inside the sealed gallery. A moment later, Victor screamed and something heavy struck the floor. Detective Mara Voss reached the locked door before anyone else. The key remained visible inside beneath the brass lock. Servants broke the door while thunder rolled across the manor. Victor sat lifeless in a carved chair before the unveiled portrait. His candle still burned beside the sealed envelope on a table. One hand rested against the chair's carved wooden lion. A tiny puncture marked the inside of his right wrist. No blade, needle, or poisoned container could be found nearby. The gallery windows were latched and painted shut decades earlier. Every portrait frame remained fixed against the solid stone wall. The strange black pearl painting appeared to be watching the body. Several guests whispered that the legendary widow had claimed another victim. Mara ignored the superstition and examined the chair. The carved lion's mouth contained a narrow, polished opening. Inside it, she discovered one fresh drop of amber liquid. Mara measured the opening against the puncture on Victor's wrist. The two positions aligned perfectly when his arm rested naturally. But no weapon remained inside the lion's mouth. Only a thin metal channel disappeared into the chair's wooden back. The detective followed the channel toward the floor beneath the chair. Fresh scratches showed the chair had recently been moved forward. Someone had positioned Victor in one exact place before midnight. Mara then examined the curtain cord beside the mysterious portrait. The blue silk cord had been replaced with newer material. Several fibers were trapped inside a brass pulley above the frame. Pulling the cord would unveil the painting at midnight. But it also moved something hidden beneath the floorboards. Mara removed one loose board behind the carved chair. Below waited a narrow spring wire and sliding steel needle. The needle connected directly to the lion's concealed metal channel. When the curtain cord moved, the spring drove the needle forward. The point entered Victor's wrist through the carved lion's mouth. A second spring immediately pulled the needle back beneath the floor. It simply returned to its hiding place after delivering poison. Mara collected the liquid and confirmed a fast-acting botanical toxin. Someone had prepared the entire mechanism before Victor entered alone. The questioning began inside Ashcombe Manor's long mirrored ballroom. Celeste Lang, Victor's widow, wore silver and showed little grief. Victor planned to remove her completely from his new will. Marcus Lang, his younger brother, had recently lost a fortune. He claimed Victor refused every request for financial help. Owen Price, the gallery curator, feared an approaching criminal investigation. Several painting his care had suspicious ownership records. The final suspect was Elise Rowan, Victor's private art restorer. She wore a dark violet stained with traces of pigment. Elise said she left the portrait gallery before sunset. Mara asked who had replaced the blue curtain cord. Owen claimed Victor ordered the replacement 3 days earlier. Elise quietly said she had never touched the new cord. The detective noticed wax beneath one of Elise's fingernails. Elise explained that restorers wax on antique frame. Her answer was reasonable, but her hands began to tremble. Mara returned to the gallery and opened Victor's sealed envelope. Inside was a prepared speech about the Black Pearl portrait. Victor intended to announce that the painting was an extraordinary forgery. The speech accused Elise of creating it without his knowledge. Mara found this convenient story almost impossible to believe. Victor had purchased the painting secretly only 6 months earlier. Financial records showed he paid Elise large unexplained amount. He had ordered the forgery and planned to sell it overseas. When investigators approached, he decided Elise would take the blame. The speech would protect his reputation and destroy her career. Elise now possessed anger, opportunity, and expert restoration. But Mara still needed evidence connecting her to the mechanism. The answer waited inside the portrait's heavy wooden frame. One corner contained a recent patch of violet-colored filler. The filler matched material used exclusively in Elise restoration kit. Behind the patch, Mara found a tiny tunnel through the frame. The blue cord wire passed through that tunnel toward the floor. Someone had disguised the mechanical connection as restoration work. A small knot joined the cord to the hidden trigger wire. The knot was known as a conservator's binding hitch. Elise had demonstrated that exact knot in her restoration handbook. Still, she argued that other experts could copy her technique. Mara agreed and revealed the final clue from Victor's candle. A faint violet fingerprint marked the candle's brass holder. The same pigment covered the cuff inside Elise's dark coat. Elise had moved the candle while preparing the chair and mechanism. She had placed it so Victor would sit in the correct position. Before everyone, Mara reconstructed the locked room murder carefully. Elise entered the gallery during the afternoon restoration period. She installed the needle springs and wire beneath the floor. Then she moved the carved chair into the weapon's precise path. She replaced the curtain cord and connected it to the trigger. That night, Victor entered and locked the door behind himself. He sat down, lit the candle, and opened his paired. At midnight, he pulled the cord to unveil the famous portrait. The hidden mechanism drove the poisoned needle into his wrist. The needle retracted before his body struck the chair. The bell rang because Victor's falling hand hit its table. Everyone outside believed the portrait's curse had killed him. Elise remained in the ballroom, surrounded by perfect witnesses. But wax violet filler pigment knot told another story. Elise stared at Victor's false accusation inside the opened envelope. Her controlled expression slowly collapsed into exhausted fury. She confessed that Victor had planned to sacrifice her completely. Police escorted her from Ashcombe Manor before the rain ended. The guests avoided looking toward the Black Pearl portrait. Mara remained behind and closed its curtain without touching the cord. The gallery contained no cursed ghost or murderous painted widow. It contained one Ford masterpiece and one carefully engineered trap. Victor had created the lie that finally gave Elise her motive. But the smallest restoration mark revealed how the murder worked. By dawn, every ancestral face seemed less frightening than before. The true monster had never lived inside the portrait at all.